We will be chatting with Master Daniel Pesina from Mortal Kombat, the original Johnny Cage, in just a moment. But before we do, I want to give a huge shout out, a Shokan size shout out to Decky Play-by-Play and the original Razor for once again helping me out and collaborating here and supplying some high octane background footage for this particular interview. They're going to be knocking the pixels out of one another all the way through this, and I couldn't be more grateful. Big shout out to the old MK crew. Please do enjoy the footage as well as the interview. So without further ado, let's go for round 2 with the original Johnny Cage, Master Daniel Pesina.
Flirt FM, Galway's alternative radio station.
Galway Gamer on Flirt FM 101.3. My name is Owen Murphy and I am the Galway Gamer. And joining me once again on the show is Master Daniel Pesina, who was Johnny Cage, Scorpion, Noob Saibot, Smoke, Sub-Zero and Reptile in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. Now, we had a chat a year or two ago and we got very in-depth in the old school MKs, and there's always something left on the table. There's always something else to bring up when it comes to Mortal Kombat. So, Master Daniel Pesina, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show here again.
Thanks for having me again. We're at it. We're up to our old shenanigans.
Up to our old shenanigans, yes indeed, sir. So, I guess we'll start off by, last time we were chatting, we were talking about Stryker. And you mentioned that Curtis Stryker was originally created for the first game, but he wasn't implemented into the series until the third. Are there any other moves or characters that were left on the cutting room floor from the original Mortal Kombat?
As I recall, from the original Mortal Kombat, we had originally planned, I'm going to say 8 or 9, not including the palette swap. Like, there was only going to be one Lin Kuei. There wasn't going to be two Lin Kuei. At least as far as for us, generally speaking, I always view Scorpion and Sub-Zero as, we were originally thinking about. They were originally brothers, so I always consider both of them as Lin Kuei. I know the storyline changed, later on, where one is, Japanese and one is, the Chinese ninja, but then, when we were first creating the game, they were both Lin Kuei. Both brothers. And then there were two, he was thinking, actually John was thinking of 2 other characters, as I recall. I think one might have been a Jax character. One was a Stryker character.
And what about moves or special moves? Were there any recorded then that didn't make it into the game itself?
Yeah, there's some recorded moves that didn't make it in a game. Or like originally when we were creating the game, the combinations weren't, the idea was to hit buttons and then you can leave the joystick and the buttons alone, and the combatant would proceed to do a flurry of moves.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, it's pretty funny because the other day I was, looking through old footage, and I noticed Liu Kang's combination. It was almost because Liu Kang, Ho Sung and I studied under the same martial art teacher, so it was really similar to what Johnny Cage actually did as a combination when we were first doing it. And it does help to have like the surviving footage left to kind of, be like, oh yeah, there was that thing. So it kind of refreshes your mind when you see it.
Excellent. And when it comes to the characters you played, how much of the story was implemented before you got into costume? How important was the story element to your portrayal of these characters?
The story element was basically at that point when we were creating them, we're really thin. We've got to really put our ideas into the creation of the character. And again, it was such a low budget project that when John asked me for help with it, he told me that whatever I wanted, I could put it into the game, just because he wasn't able to really pay us what he thought would be a substantial amount to help him out with this project. We were going to get an hourly rate of I think $50 an hour, something like that, which is nowhere near like a SAG wage or anything like that. His offer of payment was, hey, you could help me create the game and stuff like that. So we had a lot to say with how the personality developed, just because it was easier to take ideas as we were making the game, just because of time constraints. We had to get this game done in 8 or 9 months, and two, the technology limitations didn't allow it to be like games now that have that deep, really super deep background story, or just their story is different. It kind of John got to add the storyline later on when the game was successful, and he got to make a comic book, because he was always a comic book artist. So he got to really explore the story that way.
Cool. Okay. And when you came back for the second game, then was the story more fleshed out for you guys, or was it kind of more of the same?
It was more of the same, just because we already, like Johnny Cage already had a storyline, Liu Kang already had already stuff set. So certain things were already set. The Lin Kuei already had their kind of story, changing a little bit, but not too much at that time, because again, it wasn't, when number 2 came out, it wasn't until after we were done that close to being done with number 2 that the movie actually started going into, somebody bought the rights to New Line Cinema bought the rights to do the movie. So even that was, it was much easier for the actor to create the personality rather than having somebody dictate it. Again, because we didn't really have, John was the director, but he was doing so many things that there was no way he had time to be super involved in every single little thing of the project.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's cool. Speaking of filming the original Mortal Kombat games, then, Catalan Ogren and Ho Sung Pak were romantically involved. They played Kitana and Liu Kang. They were romantically involved for some time. Were there any other romances that bloomed from the set of Mortal Kombat?
No, actually, I think that was the single one that happened. That was the only one. Everybody else was busy, I guess, working.
That's fair. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's move along to one of the controversies that went with it, one of those kind of lingering ones that a lot of people bring up, and I'd like to somewhat get to the bottom of it if we can, and ask you, Daniel, what happened with BloodStorm? What was going on there?
Yeah, there was, when I was filming number 2, there, because the project all suddenly became much bigger. When we did 1, we had basically 2 artists. John was the main artist, and John Vogel did all the background art. But there was like maybe 6 or 7 programmers doing the programming. So the actual project was relatively small. So when we got number 2, all of a sudden everything got bigger, and they were going to pour more people in to help us. And one of the background artists' name was Leaf. I forget his last name, but he would come by and watch us film and stuff, and he was like one of my first fans, because he found it so cool that I could come up with things just right on the spot. I mean, to keep the game pushing along in a timely manner. But then he got a job at Stratton or something like that. He switched jobs, so he stopped working on Mortal Kombat 2 and quit midway to go to get to a bigger job where he could get more creative input. So then, which I didn't know at the time. I just found this out later, because John called me up and he's like, hey, remember Leaf? And I was like, Leaf? And I was like, yeah, I remember him. He's like, he's got a new job and he wants to know if it's okay, if I give you, if I give him your number, because he wants you to help him advertise for a new game. And then I was like, well, do you have any idea of what he wants to do? And John was just like, you know what? He goes, I think he wants you to pose like, as Johnny Cage for the advertisement. He goes, but he goes, you can't really do it exactly like Johnny Cage. He goes, you could do it with sunglasses and stuff like that, but you can't dress in the Johnny Cage costume, which mostly I owned. And then he's like, you know what? Better yet, come in tomorrow. We'll buy you some lunch and we'll talk to Ed and see what you can do. So I showed up the next day and actually it's the only time I've ever been in Ed Boon's office. He's got a nice office.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So John took me into Ed's office and then, they proceeded to tell me what I was able to wear and what I should try to stay away from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also they were like, I was like, man, well, how much should I charge him? And then, I remember Ed goofing around. He's like, man, those guys have a lot of money. Whatever amount you think of, just triple it. He goes, the worst thing they could do is just say no and they'll give you a different number. And he's like, it's a business lesson because then Ed was like, and if they say yes right away that you sold yourself too short. So next time to up it, you could arrange for that. And I started laughing, but basically I did that. I told the guy a number and he said, I told Leaf the number and he said yes right away. And I was like, damn, I could have charged him more, So yeah, and a lot of people think that, and I do think it's more of a corporate thing, letting out that myth that I got fired over that particular event when actually John and Ed helped me get the job. Too, it was more like at that time I started pressing them for the bonuses they promised me. I started saying, because it was already, what happened was I got used to not getting paid like promptly. Like I filmed all of Johnny Cage, all the creation of the pathway to the game, because we shot 5 days of footage, 8 hours a day to kind of figure out what we could use to make the game before I started filming Johnny Cage. So there was that. So there was about, I would say, 3 weeks worth of pay that I did not get paid until we started doing Rich's character, Kano, which was maybe, I'm going to say 2.5 months later.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't get paid for like 2.5. Actually, the story is Rich comes in on the second day and asks John for a check. And John had a check ready for Rich because Rich needed the money. Mm-hmm. And I look at him and I'm like, John, I go, I haven't even gotten anything yet. And he's like, what? You didn't get paid yet? And then he's like, I haven't got paid for 1 day yet. And so he's like, whoa, wait. So he ran down to the office and he's like, at the end of the day, they're going to give you a check. It's not for everything because now I got to go through and all the paperwork before because it's been a while to figure out what we owe you for the project. So I got used to not, I was like, oh man, they're always late with their bills. So finally, when we were filming, MK2, I was like, man, this is too long to wait for a bonus. We're already starting this game. I'm going to start pressing them because they probably don't want to give me, they probably won't give you money until you ask for it, basically. So at this point, I started asking for the game, and this is asking for the bonus, and this is the time, around the same time that I got the job to do the advertisement for BloodStorm. And so I think that in my opinion, the owners or the upper management of Midway wanted to not look bad and say, oh, we fired him because he did BloodStorm, as opposed to Daniel quit because we wouldn't pay him the bonus that we verbally promised him.
There were so many rumors going around that I needed to know, because another one of the rumors that went with that was that it was after you'd finished with Midway and you did the BloodStorm advertisement as something of a middle finger, if you will, to Midway. That's another one of the rumours that did the round. So I'm glad to hear exactly what happened there. Let's move along to some of the more recent Mortal Kombat. Now, I know you're not involved in the more recent games, but I'd like to get your views on a couple of bits and pieces with it. For example, what are your views on guest characters? Over the last 10 years, we've seen everybody from Freddy Krueger to Terminator to Predator, RoboCop's just after showing up now as well. What do you think of these characters existing within the Mortal Kombat universe?
Actually, first thing, I am a big fan of all those characters. I will pay money to watch a movie with all those characters in it. So I am a big fan. But two, in my opinion, they do not belong in Mortal Kombat. Like, it would be cool if they had a Freddy game, or even like a Predator versus Alien game. Back in the day, I used to play a game called, where the dinosaurs, Primal Rage.
Oh, Rage, yes, classic.
Yeah, where you're fighting with dinosaurs. That's awesome. So I think that Mortal Kombat is a martial art tournament, and it should be fought by martial artists. If you're not a martial artist, you could, Warner Brothers could have a totally different game going on that features those characters, and I just don't understand why they don't do that, because then they would double, like people like horror fans would really like to play games like that. You have a whole genre that would, you could take over. I don't understand why they put all those characters in Mortal Kombat when they don't know martial arts, and in reality, it's like, it's just mixing too much things together, because again, I'm a big Alien Predator fan, but sorry, Predator will always beat the Alien for me, in my heart, in my mind. So they need their own game, because there's no way that, even a martial artist like Liu Kang can actually beat, like an alien, because that's you need technology to beat the alien.
I think I'm on the same page with you there. I was never a fan of the guest characters myself either, and I personally couldn't see the likes of Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, for example, surviving a fight against Katana.
Yeah. You'd get pretty messed up too. But again, I think that they're missing the opportunity to really think about what they're doing. Just make games like that, because I think a lot of people would buy that. I would probably buy another fighting Alien versus Predator game.
Cool. Well, talking about martial arts, then we saw the games go through a bunch of different styles of martial arts throughout the years. We saw, for example, during the PlayStation 2 era, each character got 3 or 4 different martial arts techniques. And further on to it, then they seem to be changing over to a more firearms-based combat. So in recent years now, we've seen, we always saw Stryker, for example, with a gun. Jax has had one now in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. In recent years, we have Cassie Cage, we have Jackie Briggs, we have Aaron Black, all using firearms. Even Johnny Cage picks up an AK-47 in the story mode for the new game. What is your take on these characters using firearms?
I think they, again, are going in the wrong direction. Just because, it's my opinion, looking at it from my standpoint, is, we started with a martial art game, and I think because they don't have, I don't know why, but the martial arts in the game has not grown. When I see the movement, sure, it's faster, but it's basically almost the same as what we did 25 years ago. So the actual technical part of the game, the martial arts in the game, has not grown since 1 and 2. And I know I watched some of the other ones where they're martial arts. They say they changed styles, but they didn't really change styles because I don't think the people who were doing the moves really knew those styles deep. For me, it looked like, oh, it's the same thing, but somebody did some research and is trying to do that, but without enough martial art experience, you can't really fake that. Yeah, I hope it does. And again, it's coming from me, a big martial art master and a big martial art geek. Usually I can see something and I know, if when I watch anything, I could, if it's a traditional martial art move, I could pretty much place it what style or where it's from or whether it's, or whether it's just kind of made up or anything like that. So I think that they haven't tapped into the original concept of it being a martial art game. They got sidetracked by the fatalities, and I think that's because that's always been easier to do. It's an easy way to add to the game is to make the fatalities bloodier or more violent, as opposed to, okay, how would we take a martial art concept, because there's a lot out there, and apply it into the game.
And would you rather see Mortal Kombat then follow the likes of, say, Tekken?
Two, again, I'm a fan of Tekken, but something like that, but even that falls a little short as far as I can, when I watch it. I'm like, oh man, they have a good idea, but they really are missing some of the essence that would make a martial art fighting game unique. And I think that when it becomes unique, people like to play that, Two, we live in a time where everyone, because of the internet, especially because of quarantine, everyone is on the internet researching, looking at stuff. It's a lot different now than it was 25 years ago. So a lot of people who don't know martial arts, but they have an eye for martial arts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, so they would get what you're doing. If you're creating a new martial art idea and people would be really into that because, especially with, televised MMA and, everybody loves the Ip Man movies and all these other martial arts are people just who don't know martial arts go out and see them or watch them on pay-per-view. They have an eye for movement. And I think that there's an opportunity there to fill that, with some creative content. And people would be really happy about that because, again, everything is about growing and pushing forward and being unique.
Do you think that there are any video games out there that are for true martial arts fans then?
No, actually, on Twitch there was Shaolin versus Wudang, I think the name of the game was. They had a good concept. The play was a little choppy, but they were going more towards an old school, like an old school kung fu movie. And I think that they were going in a good direction. They just needed to have, when we were making, the original Mortal Kombat, John was at the helm and he had the vision. But he allowed me as the martial art instructor at the time, the most with the martial art experience, pour that into the game, and Ed was the programmer and he and his team poured that part into the game. And it was just all these, if you let each person who's an expert at what they're doing do what they do, you can have a really cool game. And I think that right now that is what's lacking. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to control the game or that. And if you're not really heavily into the martial arts, you shouldn't, you're not going to hit it on the mark when you try to, not that you don't have any say, but you should really let the professionals at what they do it. I don't tell an artist that's not true. But when I look at art, comics, because I still like dabble in I look to read some of my old comics. When I look at it, I rarely look at it for oh, that technique is impossible. You know, I look at it for that, but sometimes when I'm looking at artwork, I'm like, that looks cool, but that body posture is not real.
Mm-hmm.
You can't throw a kick like that. No one can actually execute a proper martial art technique like that. Or even when I'm watching, like, you know, and again, no offense to anything, I was watching some of the MK, the new MK weapons work. And when when I look at it, like, oh, that guy doesn't know how to use that weapon. Oh, that guy, you know, that person uses the weapon maybe beginner intermediate. So right away, I have this eye when I'm looking at it. You know, and most people might not know it, but some people will be like, oh, that looks a little off. And so they know the movement is a little off. So there is something missing there. There's a missed opportunity.
Excellent, excellent. I think that just about wraps us all up. Just one more quick question for you then, Daniel. The Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection online had been heavily rumoured for a release. It hadn't been officially mentioned anywhere, but it had been on the likes of Amazon listing. Do you know anything about this? It would be a collection of the original MK games.
No, I have no idea, but I'd be interested in them coming out with it.
Excellent then, sir. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much for taking
thank
the
you
time
again.
once again. It's
Yeah.
always an absolute pleasure talking to Johnny Cage, I've got to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again. Thanks for your time. Everybody out there, stay safe. You know, keep safe distancing, wash your hands, take care of, you know, we're on this planet all together, whether we like it or not. So let's just take care of each other. It's a lot easier that way.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much.
101.3 Flirt FM.